My name's Darren, and in 2021, I inherited a farmhouse from an uncle I barely knew. It was located in a remote part of central Kentucky, a place where GPS stops working about 5 miles before you get there, and the nearest neighbor is more than a mile away. The house sat on 40 acres of overgrown pasture land, surrounded by dense woods on all sides. It was old, creaky floorboards, original fixtures, and a strange, circular split-rail fence that surrounded nothing in particular in the middle of the backyard. That fence was the first thing I noticed. Wasn't like any livestock pen I'd ever seen. No gate, no posts tall enough for wiring, just a 12-foot wide ring of decaying wood, like someone had fenced in a patch of grass and then left it to rot. When I asked the lawyer who handled the estate, he said my uncle had it built himself for spiritual reasons, and no one in town really knew much else. I almost tore it down that first week. But something stopped me, and I'm glad I didn't, because as I came to find out, that fence wasn't built to keep something out. It was built to keep something in. At first it was little things. Birds never flew over that circle. I didn't think much of it until the 4th or 5th time I noticed a flock veering hard to the left or right as they approached it, wings flapping in panic. Then the grass inside the fence stopped growing. Everything else in the yard was a mess. Waist-high weeds, dandelions, and burrs. But inside the circle, the ground stayed flat and bare. No weeds, no insects, no animals ever stepped in. Not even deer. And they were everywhere else on the property. It gave me a weird feeling in my gut. I'd catch myself staring at it from the kitchen window, sometimes for minutes at a time, like I was waiting for something to happen. Then, one morning, it did. I went outside to trim back a cluster of vines near the barn and saw something in the center of the circle. A hole, perfectly round, maybe 6 inches wide, freshly dug, no tools, no signs of pawing, just clean black dirt at the edges. I walked around the fence to get a better look. Still no way in, no gaps, no open section. And I could have stepped over it easily, sure. It was only about hip high. But I didn't. Something about it just felt wrong. The next day, there were 2 holes, both identical, both in line with each other. By the end of the week, there were 6, and that's when the scratching started. At night. Just after midnight, coming from beneath the floorboards in the room that faced the backyard. Scraping, dragging, slow, like something trying to claw its way up. I told myself it was raccoons, maybe a possum. Until one night I decided to check. I waited in the dark with my phone flashlight ready, crouched by the vent cover near the floor. The sound came, soft and steady, like nails on wood. I flicked the light on and looked through the vent. And I swear to God, something moved down there. I jumped back from the vent, heart racing. I didn't see it clearly, just a glimpse. Something pale, not an animal. Too long, too thin. I couldn't sleep after that. The scratching came again the next night, and the next, each time louder, closer, like it had moved under another part of the house. By the end of the week, the sound was coming from beneath my bedroom, and every morning, there were more holes in the circle. 12 now. Arranged in a ring, each about 6 inches wide, perfectly spaced. Still no footprints, no disturbed grass, just deep, dark holes, like the earth had punched itself inward. I called a local contractor to ask if there might be sinkholes forming. He came out, took one look, and got visibly uncomfortable. "That's not natural subsidence," he said. "You say you didn't dig these?" I shook my head. Then I wouldn't mess with it. That was the only thing he said before he packed up and left. That night, the scratching stopped. But I didn't feel relief. I felt watched, as if the silence itself was a warning. At 2:03 a.m., I woke up to a sound that didn't come from inside the house, but from outside. From the backyard, from inside the circle. A low hum, rhythmic, deep. I crept to the window and pulled the curtain back just an inch, and in the moonlight, I saw something rise from one of the holes. A hand, long fingers, grayish skin, wet-looking. It gripped the edge of the hole and held still, like it was waiting. I don't know what came over me, but I grabbed a flashlight, ran outside barefoot, and stood in front of the fence. I could still see the hand, not moving, not retreating. I made a decision I'll regret for the rest of my life. I stepped over the fence. The second my foot touched the dirt inside the circle, everything stopped. The air got heavy. The hum vanished. The hand slid back down into the earth, not in fear, but in recognition. And all 12 holes started to tremble. The ground beneath me breathed. Then, the 13th hole began to open, right at my feet. I stumbled back, nearly falling as the ground beneath me cracked. The 13th hole widened fast, not like it was being dug, but like the earth wanted to open. Like something underneath had been waiting for my permission. And now, it had it. I turned to jump over the fence, but it was gone. I swear to you, it had disappeared. Or maybe I was somewhere else. The trees looked twisted. The sky was darker than it should have been. The wind was gone. The air was thick and cold. And then I heard it. A voice, not from above, from below. "You broke the ring?" It wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It sounded grateful. I don't remember much after that. Just blackness. The sound of something slithering, and hands, more than 2, brushing my ankles, my wrists, my face. I woke up in the living room, morning sunlight streaming in, my boots muddy, my jeans torn, a faint sulfur smell clinging to my skin. I ran outside. The fence was back. The circle was sealed. All the holes? Gone. Perfect flat dirt. Not even a footprint. But on the front porch, nailed to the door, was a note in my uncle's handwriting. Old. Faded. But I could still read it. If you're reading this, you've already let it out. Don't run. It doesn't like running. I packed my bags and left that day. Sold the place for nothing. Never looked back. But sometimes, late at night, no matter where I go, I'll hear scratching under the floorboards, and I know I'm not far enough away. My name is Eli, and I grew up in a rural part of West Virginia, tucked between forested hills and empty back roads that stretch for miles without a single house or turnoff. When I was 16, I took a part-time job helping an older man named Tom, who did maintenance for the county. His job was mostly checking on old, abandoned buildings, boarded-up schools, long-forgotten ranger stations, and once a month, Cold Pines Church. Cold Pines had been shuttered since the 1980s. A fire had gutted part of the back wall, and no one ever rebuilt it. But for some reason, the county insisted the property still be inspected for safety liability. It sat at the end of a barely visible trail, deep in the woods, past 2 fences and a bridge that creaked even when no one was on it. And the weirdest part? The bell tower was still standing, cracked, scorched, and full of holes, but intact. No one had touched it in years. No power ran to it. No mechanism remained. And yet, the bell still rang sometimes. Once a year, always in October, always at 3:33 a.m. Tom called it a prank, said it was probably animals, or wind, or the tower shifting in the cold. But one year, we were there when it rang, and there was no wind, no movement, just that sound, loud, slow, echoing through the trees like it was trying to wake the dead. And maybe it did. We weren't supposed to go back after dark. Tom had always been strict about that. "You inspect during daylight," he told me once. If something's wrong at night, it'll still be wrong in the morning. But one afternoon in early October, the weather turned fast. Heavy rain delayed our rounds, and by the time we got to Cold Pines, it was almost dusk. Tom looked at the sky, then at the path ahead. "Quick in and out," he muttered. "We don't stay past dark." We crossed the rickety footbridge, climbed through the brush, and reached the clearing. The church sat crooked on its foundation, half choked by vines. Most of the back wall had collapsed completely, exposing pews that were now covered in moss and animal droppings. The bell tower loomed overhead, blackened, but still standing like a skeleton, with a spine of old wood and rot. I took pictures, filled out the log sheet, and was ready to leave. But Tom lingered. He was staring at the tower. "Something's off," he said under his breath. "Can't hear the birds." He was right. The woods were silent. No wind, no insects, no rustling leaves, just the faint creaking of the tower and our own breathing. Then Tom froze. He pointed toward the bell tower. "Did you see that?" I hadn't. I squinted through the fading light, and that's when the bell moved. Just a little. No sound, just a twitch. Then it swung again. Slower. Further. Still no sound. Then, on the third swing, bong. The sound was massive, deeper than any church bell I'd ever heard. It vibrated through the trees, the ground, the bones in my chest. Then again. Bong. Tom grabbed my arm and hissed, "We have to go." I turned to run, and someone was standing in the aisle of the ruined church, far back, half in shadow, a figure, dressed in what looked like robes, facing the altar, not moving, not acknowledging us, just there. Tom didn't wait. He dragged me by the arm as we sprinted back through the woods. But as we ran, I made the mistake of looking back. And the bell? It was still ringing, but the figure was gone. Tom never spoke about that night. He never filed the inspection form, never brought up the church again. A month later, he quit the job altogether. I kept the photos. I rewatched the video I'd recorded just before the bell rang. The footage was grainy and dark. But in the last few frames, just before the bell moved, I saw something in the tower. Eyes. 2 of them. Reflecting light that wasn't there. And I couldn't stop thinking about the figure I'd seen in the aisle. It hadn't looked surprised or curious. It had looked like it was waiting. So I did the dumbest thing I've ever done. I went back. Alone. October 30th, just before midnight. I parked at the edge of the woods and walked the trail by flashlight. Every creak of a branch made me jump, but part of me needed to know. Needed to see if it had all been real, or if my mind had filled in the blanks. The church was just as I remembered it, rotting, silent, still. I stepped inside. The pews were worse now, warped and collapsed, like something heavy had sat in them over and over again. The altar was crumbling, but the bell looked untouched. I pointed my light toward the tower. It didn't move, not even a sway. I stood there for nearly 10 minutes, barely breathing. Then, just as I turned to leave, the bell rang. Bong. So loud I dropped the flashlight. It flickered, rolled away. In that strobe of light, I saw something move on the ceiling. Something large, something crawling. I scrambled backward as the bell rang again and again, faster now, like an alarm or a signal. I turned to run, but the front door was gone. Not closed. Gone. And in its place, pews, dozens of them, perfectly intact. And they were filled. Every seat occupied by people in robes, heads bowed, faces hidden. I stepped back toward the altar, trembling, and behind it, the figure stood waiting. Same robes, same stillness. It raised its head. No face, just a hole where a face should be. Then it whispered, "You heard the call. Now you must stay." I ran. I didn't care where. I just needed to move, to get away from the altar, from the pews, from the thing with no face. I barreled down the center aisle, but the room twisted. The back wall was gone now, or maybe it never existed. Instead, there was just forest. Endless, moonlit trees, and dozens of figures standing between them. Same robes, same bowed heads. Some had no faces. Some had too many. The bell rang again, closer this time, like it was coming from inside the church now. I found a broken window and dove through it, cutting my arm on the frame. Didn't matter. I was out. I sprinted through the woods, branches tearing at me. I didn't look back. When I finally reached the car, I slammed the door, peeled out, and didn't stop driving until I hit the highway. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't sleep the next either. Because every time I closed my eyes, I heard it again. Bong, bong, bong. That sound, that impossible, massive sound, ringing inside my head. Weeks passed, then months. I moved across the state, changed jobs, didn't tell anyone. But some nights, I still wake up at exactly 3:33 a.m., always the same. No sound, no warning, just a shadow in the corner of the room, shaped like a man in robes. And the next day, I'll see an obituary in a local paper, a name I don't recognize, but always in a town I've passed through, always someone who lived alone, always found with a look of horror on their face. The bell doesn't summon the dead, it chooses the next. And one day, it'll ring for me again. My name is Riley, and for nearly 8 years I worked as a park ranger in a remote section of the Ozarks. Miles of unbroken forest, twisting hills, cliffs, and rivers that ran cold even in July. It was the kind of place that swallowed sound, the kind of place where GPS was useless and radios only worked when they felt like it. Most of my shifts were uneventful. I liked it that way. Walk the trails, check the posts, file the reports, watch for campers ignoring rules. But there was one stretch of land, a narrow gulch near the base of a ridge, that we were told never to patrol after dark. It wasn't marked on any official map. No signage, no mile markers. Just a faint dirt path, barely visible between the trees. We called it Whispers Pass, and everyone who had been there, near there, agreed on one thing. You don't go in if the forest feels too quiet, and if you hear something whisper your name, don't answer. I didn't believe any of it, until I broke the rule, and learned what happens when you do. It was late September. I was covering a double shift after one of the rookies called in sick. Around 10:30 p.m., I got a call from a camper on the North Ridge. Said they heard shouting down near the gulch and thought someone might be hurt. That meant Whispers Pass. I hesitated. I could have radioed it in and waited for backup, but the nearest ranger was over 40 minutes out. If someone was actually injured out there, I didn't have time to waste. So I went. I took the old switchback down the ridge and entered the lower forest with nothing but my flashlight, a flare, and my sidearm. At first, everything looked normal, quiet, still. Too still. Even the insects had gone silent. I found the path, barely visible, just a thin line through the underbrush, and followed it, heart pounding louder than my boots on the leaves. About 10 minutes in, I saw something strange. A campsite. Small. Tidy. Looked recently abandoned. One tent, a circle of stones for a fire, a tin coffee cup still warm to the touch. No sign of the camper. I called out, "Park Ranger, hello?" Nothing. I stepped closer, and that's when I noticed something even stranger. There were no footprints, not leading to the tent, not around it, like the campsite had just appeared. That's when I heard it. Riley. It was soft, barely a breath, but it came from behind me. I spun around, nothing. Then again, "Riley." But this time it came from the other direction. I pulled my sidearm, called out again. Still no answer. That's when my flashlight started to flicker, and the woods, the trees, the air, everything began to feel off, like the forest had shifted around me. The path I came in on? Gone. The campsite? Gone. Just trees. Black shapes. Too many of them. Too close together. I raised my radio to call dispatch. Static. Dead. Then the whisper came again. Only this time it said, "Behind you." I turned around slowly. Every instinct screamed not to, but I had to. At first I didn't see anything, just trees. Mist curling low to the ground. My flashlight was barely holding on, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then I saw it. A figure, maybe 50 feet away, half hidden by the trees. Tall. Wrong. It stood like a man, but the arms were too long, nearly to the ground. The legs were thin, unsteady. Its face was hidden, but I could see the way its head tilted, like a curious dog watching something struggle. And then it mimicked my voice. "Don't move." It said it exactly the way I had earlier when calling into the woods. But it didn't come from its mouth. It came from all around me, like the forest itself was saying it. I stepped back. It stepped forward. It didn't walk. It glided, like its feet never touched the ground. I raised my weapon, heart slamming in my chest, and aimed at center mass. "Stop!" It didn't. I fired once. The echo shattered the silence, and then nothing. No blood, no flinch, no sound of impact. Just a low, grinding, clicking sound, like wood bending and snapping underwater, came from deep in its chest. Then it whispered again. "Riley." This time, it sounded like my father. He'd died 4 years earlier. Then again, this time like my mother. "Riley, come home." The trees behind it began to shift, forming a kind of hallway through the woods, narrow, pulsing with unnatural light. And the thing pointed down the path, its arm extended, far longer than any humans should, stretching like rope. It wanted me to follow. I didn't follow it. I couldn't. But I also couldn't move. My legs felt like they were buried in mud. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it would tear itself out of my chest. The creature, or whatever it was, waited, still pointing, its face featureless and hollow. Then it smiled. I don't know how else to describe it. Its mouth didn't move, but I felt the smile. Inside my head. Like a hook slowly pulling something loose in my thoughts. I did the only thing I could think of. I reached into my vest pocket, grabbed the emergency flare, and struck it. A burst of red fire lit up the forest. The thing hissed, a horrible, dry, cracking sound like wood shattering. And its body snapped backward into the trees, moving impossibly fast. The hallway of forest collapsed. The trees returned to normal. The air rushed back in, and I could hear the wind again. I ran. No flashlight, no map, just instinct. Branches tore at my arms. Thorns grabbed my pants. But I didn't stop. I didn't stop until I saw the ranger tower blinking through the trees. I collapsed on the front steps. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Who would believe me? But I started researching, and I found something buried in an old report from the 1940s, back when this land was federal territory. A ranger named Will Harmon disappeared in Whispers Pass. When they found his journal, his last entry was a single line. "Something in the woods keeps saying my name." That was 80 years ago, and every few years since, someone's gone missing in the same stretch of forest. Always alone, always after dark. They never find bodies, just abandoned gear, and the same soft whisper on night patrol radio recordings. Sometimes, even now, after I transferred hundreds of miles away, I still wake up hearing my name, whispered from the trees outside my window. And I know it's looking for me again, because once you've heard it, you're never really out.